Getting my private pilot license changed the trajectory of my life and how I view everything. This little grass strip right here changed my life. From a young age, I watched airplanes take off and land on this grass strip and enjoyed watching the planes fly in and out. From there, I was introduced to aviation by a family friend of ours and started flight training at age 15. I got my first solo in December of 2022 and my private pilot license in the summer of 2023. What is a private pilot license? Everyone's interested in becoming a pilot and wonders how it all works. The pilot's license starts off at a student pilot license. A student pilot license is super easy to get. You meet with a flight instructor, they approve you on an online application, and you get it about 3 months later in the mail. It's a little green card, and you can carry it around, and it's bragging rights. But you can't really do anything with a student pilot license without approval. The thing that we're striving for when we get a student pilot license is the private pilot license. The private pilot license doesn't allow you to fly private jets like most people think. It allows you to fly an aircraft privately for your friends and family, for fun, for leisure. It allows you to go from place to place in an aircraft across the entire United States unrestricted. I shouldn't say unrestricted. There's a couple restrictions, but you'll get to learn about those in your flight training. You can't fly for hire. That's the biggest restriction. You can't get paid. You can't get compensated in any way, shape, or form to fly as a private pilot. For those types of operations, you need to have a commercial license. In order to fly in bad weather where you can't see outside, you need to have an instrument rating. To fly planes with multiple engines, you need to have a multi-engine rating. In order to fly jets, you need to have a type rating. So there's lots of things to build off, but the private pilot license is your first initial step into aviation. It is the biggest baby step. Now, we need to find a flight school. The flight school is probably one of the biggest restrictions or determining factors on how you're going to get your license done. The flight school is probably the simplest thing to find, though, I would say. You just have to know where to look. Google is the #1 way people find a flight school. However, it's not the best way. In my opinion, the best way is going on Apple Maps or Google Maps and looking up regional airports near me. Once you see a regional airport, go visit that airport. Ask the person physically who's standing there, do you know anyone who trains people how to fly? That is the best way to find out where to learn and where you can find a flight instructor or a flight school. There are so many different airports across the country. There's thousands in the entire United States and hundreds of airports in your state, guaranteed. Go to any, there may even be 3 or 4 in your county, at least probably 1 per county, but go visit them. Go visit the close ones. Go visit any airport around you. Call them. See if they have a flight school nearby or someone who teaches at that airport. Finding a flight instructor is one of the most crucial parts of your flight training. This is the person that you're going to spend tens of hours with, dozens of hours with, for multiple hours at a time. The biggest thing I can say is find someone you want to spend dozens of hours with. If this person you don't click with necessarily, don't fly with them. Find another flight instructor. There's nothing wrong with finding a new one. In the end, they work for you. Make them work for you. If they don't work for you, and you're not meshing with them, you don't understand what they're saying, maybe not that, because everything's new. But if you don't understand, they can't explain subjects to you, go find another flight instructor. That's the best advice I can give to people. If you pick one that matches your personality and that you mesh with, Also, just as important, find one that has a great reputation at that airport. Ask other people that you see at the airport, hey, have you met such and such? Yes, no. Find out what their opinions are on them. If they're a knowledgeable CFI and they're well known in that area, their training is going to be reflected in their reputation. How they train people is going to determine what other people think of them. Cost. This is the biggest question I always get. Cost is one of the most important factors that people always ask me about. How much does it cost? Well, it depends on your area of the country. Specific areas of the country are more expensive to learn how to fly planes. In a more expensive environment like Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York, it's going to be a much higher price because there's much more demand for it. In a more rural area, it's going to be a lower price because there's much less demand for it. So it depends on where you live, but if I had to make a guesstimated range, it would probably cost anywhere between $12,000 and $20,000 in today's dollar, 2026. So with that, maybe keep it in mind, go ask your local flight school or your local flight instructor what they think and get more information from there. Okay, Editor Travis here. I also want to mention on the subject of cost that it varies wildly based on what type of aircraft you're going to be flying in. If you're flying in a really small 150 or a 172, it's going to be much less expensive if you're going to fly in a brand new Cirrus SR-20 or SR-22. So make sure when you look at a flight school or you look online, you see what their rental rates are, and then you can make a determination if you're thinking about cost in that way. Now, there's a variety, a long list of different regulations that you have to comply with in order to get your license. Number one, you have to be eligible. You have to be 17 years old to get your license. You have to have a logbook endorsement from an authorized instructor on the ground areas that you covered. You have to pass a knowledge test with at least a 70%, which is you have to pass a knowledge test with at least a 70%. There's 60 questions on the exam, and there's a method to prepare for them, which we'll cover in a second. You have to meet the aeronautical experience requirements, which we'll also go over in a second. You have to pass a practical test, which is done with a FAA examiner. They are called a DPE, or a designated pilot examiner. These people are picked by the FAA and regulate and test people in the aviation community who want to become a private pilot. Then you have to hold that student pilot certificate that we talked about a minute ago. The student pilot certificate, easy little check mark to put in those boxes. Let's divide this. We have to talk about the aeronautical knowledge areas in one bucket, and we have to talk about the flight areas in one bucket. The aeronautical knowledge areas, you need to find a online ground school for that. That's my recommendation. You can go over it all with your CFI, but the online ground schools are much easier. You pay a one-time fee or maybe a monthly fee for an entire plethora of knowledge. It prepares you for flying, it prepares you for going and taking your knowledge test. The number one that I would recommend would be Gold Seal. I love Gold Seal. I can't recommend Gold Seal enough. They're great. They're super well made. They're videos and text, so it's not too hard to digest. The second one that I would recommend is Sporties. Sporties is one of the most popular for good reason. They are a very good company and they do a very good job on their online ground schools. The last one that I would say would be Flight Insight. This is a smaller one than Gold Seal and Sporties, but he has a very good YouTube channel, and I would, if you don't get Flight Insight's ground school itself, I would watch as many of his YouTube videos as you can just to supplement. It's free and it's very good lessons 100% of the time. This right here, if you want to pause and take a peek at this is the wide variety of things that you need to know and cover in order to become a private pilot. The next is our second bucket, flight proficiency. You have to cover this long list of things that you'll go over with your CFI, how to fly the plane. Pre-flight preparation, pre-flight procedures, airport and base operations, takeoffs, landings, and go-arounds, which is a rejected landing, performance maneuvers, ground reference maneuvers, navigation, slow flight and stalls, steep basic instrument maneuvers, emergency operations, night operations, and post-flight procedures. Aeronautical experience. You have to have a specific amount of hours minimum in order to go even take your private pilot check ride. You have to have 40 hours of total flight time. 20 of that has to be with a flight instructor. Another 10 has to be solo or by yourself. Nothing but you, your thoughts, and the plane. Of those 20 hours with a flight instructor, you have to have 3 hours of cross-country training, meaning you have to go from A to B, and the distance between A and B has to be more than 50 nautical miles. You have to have 3 hours of night training. One of those has to be a cross-country. 3 hours maneuvering and referencing the instrument panel only, so you can't see outside. You're flying simply off of what's inside the aircraft. You have to have 3 hours with an authorized instructor in preparation for your practical test. That's all in your 20 hours with a CFI. That's your minimum. The other 10 hours with your CFI 10 hours of solo have to be 5 hours of solo cross-country time. One of those cross-countries has to be a long cross-country, more than 150 nautical miles, and then 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop at an airport with a control tower. Now, these are minimums. These are not expectations. So our expectations, the minimum, the average, national average right about now is 65 hours of flight time. I've had students complete their license in 45 hours. I've also had students complete their license in 115 hours. So it's a wide variety, and it depends on how often you come in. If you come in 4 or 5 days a week, you're going to be closer to the 45-hour mark. If you're coming in once a week, you're going to be closer to the 115 hours mark. It's all up to you and how dedicated you are to the flight training. Now, we have our tests, right? We have our knowledge tests on one side, and we have our check ride on the other. In order to pass your written, you have to have that 70%, like we talked about, and you have to go to a specific testing location. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to do, but it takes a lot of time and effort to study for. The check ride is a separate bucket, and they also split it into 2 sections, the ground section and the flight section. The ground section, you'll go over a variety of topics, mostly review on what you did on your written. Then in your flight portion, you'll go over all the things that your CFI prepared you for and what you needed to learn to get your private pilot license. Now, you've gotten everything done. You've got your privileges in general. Your privileges allow you as a private pilot to fly anywhere in the United States in any plane you're certified to fly with passengers for as long as you'd like. There's no limit. It's a free check to go see the world from a new perspective. Getting your private pilot license isn't just about a simple check or a challenge, though it is, and it's a wonderful challenge. It has an amazing reward at the end of it. There is a whole new world that you get to go explore. And to be frank, it has bragging rights. You can walk up to anyone and say, yeah, I did something that 99% of the population can't do. I became a private pilot. From there, it's up to you how you want to progress. Do you want to continue with flight training and get more ratings, more certificates, or do you want to enjoy the privileges that you have? It's one of the beauties that we have living in America, we have a general aviation environment for the general public. So, all in all, in order to get your private pilot license, you need to know what license you're going to get. You need to know your goal. You need to find a flight school. You need to find a flight instructor. You need to go through an online school, pass your written, pass your practical, and then you can become a private pilot and enjoy those privileges that you have.